Hi, friends, and welcome to another podcast. This is a channel where I share my insights. And today I'm answering a question: how do we help those who are miserable? I got this question from a friend. I thought it was interesting because the people that she's living with are clearly unhappy, and she wants to help. And perhaps you are around some miserable people, or you're miserable yourself. So let's talk about how we would help people in our lives that are miserable. So stick around. So likely you are wondering how you might be of service to people who are miserable. Obviously so, or you wouldn't be watching something like this, or you may be curious about how you can yourself not be miserable. And so I'll touch on a little bit of that. But my friend is living in another state at the moment, and she's living with a couple who have a couple of children and a dog sitting service. And in a recent letter to me, she said that the people she's living with are completely miserable. So her description of the situation is that they're bickering all the time, fighting and really crispy with one another. There's having to take care of all these dogs, and they also have other jobs. And they make tons of money, and it's just chaos. And she's wondering, how could she be helpful? And while I think that's a noble thing, the short answer to that question is there's no help for these people. And any attempt to help would only create further tension. So we have to understand how miserable people are trapped in a certain mindset that they identify with and have no clue that there's an alternative to the way life is perceived. So the best way to handle a situation like that, unless you're asked to help, is to be unmiserable yourself in their presence and not say anything, but to be a calming presence so that they might sense your energy field and say, how can you be so calm at a time like this? Then that's your opportunity to teach. And that's kind of where I am. And I'll explain that in a little bit, but miserable people don't really understand that they're miserable. They haven't had enough of it. And misery does not love help. The phrase doesn't go, misery loves help, does it? The phrase goes, misery loves company. And so miserable people tend to attract like-minded miserable people. And they do something called commiserating. And commiserating is a bonding activity. It is an act of love, which is weird because love will get its way no matter what. In your spiritual insight, you'll learn that even criminals love each other in what they're doing. And there's a dark side to love, which is insidious, but it is very difficult to understand. But miserable people bond in their misery. They gather in the coffee room and bitch and gripe and complain, and that's okay. That is a way they identify with one another. It is a communal act. And I'm not judging it, because I used to be one of those people. Just life is so hard, and oh man, oh God, and let's just bond over this. Let's create a community of miserable people. And that's fine. But if you really want to recover from this mindset, you'll have to know that you create your own misery. in that misery is brought on by a misunderstanding that the outside world is causing the inside condition. That's all. We just haven't really understood that the inner realm, which is rich with feeling, energy, insight, all sorts of intangible things are very difficult to describe. These inner conditions, which when not paid attention to, are painting a picture of hardened reality, which is already over. So you haven't converted to, it's often described as moving from the mind to the heart. I just think it's a very deep insight into the inner realm, which doesn't really exist. There's no such thing as the inner body. You can't find it. In the same way, there's no such thing as the brain thinking a thought. The brain does not excrete a thought the same way that the liver excretes bile. So the brain is not thinking. It just feels like your thoughts are up there, but nobody knows where a thought is. Nobody knows where the inner body is. There's no location of it. It's just the sensation that my gut or my deep insight is coming from in the solar plexus, but I can't find that either. There's a vagus nerve that goes up to the brain, and there are neurons in the stomach, but you're not thinking. The gut is not the location of the deeper mind, nor is the brain the location of the shallow mind. Right? It just feels that way. But that's a whole different thing. Spiritual insight into who you are, into your truth, is a realization that the law of compensation, or reaping what you sow, is putting the inner realm first. That the inner condition is what leads your perception of the outer condition, or the hologram that it projects. So if you think about the world as out there, it is a projection of a kind of light that is in you. So if your spirit is radiant and bubbly and effervescent and fun and energetic, it seems as though your life is filled with all sorts of energetic, effervescent, and beautiful and abundant things. It is a whimsical, childlike nature that you discover within yourself that leads the so-called outer condition. And this conversion is what spirituality is about, possibly. That's one angle of it, is to awaken an inner life that was dormant. So, in miserable people, there's a dormancy of the inner life that is awaiting their discovery through silence and stillness and quiet, a place where many people haven't gone yet. They're not finished with the misery. They're not finished commiserating. Here's a way to think about it. They are yet to be so miserable in their misery that their suffering is insufferable. Their pain is intolerable. Right? You may be at a point in your life where your misery, you've had enough of it. It's like an alcoholic. I have enough. Or an overeater. I've had enough. The ego has enough. And the place where it has been the place that it has been avoiding is space. Which is strange. Because this inner space, or this inner silence or stillness, is available to us in a proportion. The importance of it is available to us in a proportion. The universe is 99.999% space. So you could say that a person who is miserable, suffering all the time, is only concerned with stuff. Paychecks. Being seen from the outside. What people think. What makes me different. Competition. Getting ahead. Urgency. Fear. All of the ego's favorite things is 0.001% of the universe. This awaiting treasure, 99.99% space, is awaiting your discovery. And you have most likely opened a little bit of space in you. And in that space, there is something that appears as the ability to theorize about your life. And that's how it begins. So your spiritual journey begins with understanding that there is a turnaround point to misery and suffering. How? I like to make a hypothetical. I like to say, when you're at the lowest point in your life, depressed and sad or whatever, you can hypothetically think of the opposite emotion. It may not feel like you can turn it around, but you can say, hypothetically, I am depressed because I know joy. Now, you have to get into duality. A person is not totally depressed in the same way that the universe is not totally space or totally matter. You realize there are no insides without outsides. So when it goes to emotional guardrails, your rock bottom could be a proportion of 99.99% and 001%. So in your so-called worst and darkest moment, you are at 99.99% depression, only because there remains a 0.001% of joy. Otherwise, if there wasn't any room for joy, you wouldn't know that you were depressed. I'm getting into duality here, the limits of duality. In the same way that you also realize there's no obstacle, right? Like most of what you come up with as a nightmare never comes true. So, in a dualistic universe, a relative universe, we know joy because there is sadness. We know pleasure because there is pain. And you're always able to go just a notch beyond, at least in a hypothetical situation. If you're suffering, you know you're suffering because you know what it's like not to suffer. There remains the potential to change, even if tiny. So miserable people think, I don't know what they think. They probably don't think they're miserable until they've already reached that threshold. Right? So in these emotional guardrails of happiness and sadness, you can be so sad, but pause for a moment and think about what happiness is. Just recall the emotion. And that is the turnaround point. You can conceive of the emotion, and conception means space. You can conceive of it. You've made a womb. And that space grows. Right? So even though you can't feel happy when you're sad, you can think happy. And that's what begins to open it. You reluctantly go there. You feel horrible because you know what not horrible is, deep within the recesses of who you are. And you learn to cross over. And you're not totally sad. Nobody's totally depressed. Nobody's totally lost. That's the beauty of having an intellect that can see dualistically. Not everybody sees it yet. There are people that may think they are totally on the bottom. But you can't squeeze out potential. And there are no insides without outsides. And so death is kind of the same way, right? How do you know you're alive if part of you isn't dead or dying? There is no death, there's just transition. I'm talking about transition in a dualistic way. And you'll pick up on these things. But you must recognize them within yourself to be able to teach them to others. Because you realize there's no forcing in this world. There's no making it happen. You can't go to people who are miserable and say, hey, you're making your own miserable. Just like in the same way you can't go to somebody who's worried all the time and say, stop worrying. You have to be that change that you wish to see, first of all. So in my friend's case, she has to be unmiserable and be in their presence. And maybe there will be an invitation. Hey, I notice you're always in a good mood. That's an invitation. So in that case, the teacher in you appeared, and when you are ready, the student comes. So if you want to be a helper of miserable people, or be a servant of some kind, or you have to be ready. You yourself have to be that change that you are wanting to help with. And you'll have to go through this process yourself so that you can find that opening that is being extended to you and widen it. Bring light to it. And it'll come to you. The universe provides for itself, and it provides a need, a so-called need, so it can fulfill the need. That's another dualistic way of thinking about this. So if you're service-based, if you want to help, you have just turned yourself into a helper, which means you're a yin and you've called your yang, right? Dualistic. If you're a helper, you called in some helpless people, but they're not totally helpless. They've already started figuring this out in themselves, and you're just going to help encourage them. Because you'll be the person that paints a picture when the world is falling apart, or sings a song when everybody's miserable, or seems to be always in a good mood. And so the people will say, well, how you do this? Oh, well, this is what I do, right? So your yang, and your yin has found you, or whatever. You see? So when the teacher is ready, the student appears. When the student is ready, the teacher will appear. And it's just in perfect synchrony and harmony with one another. And there's no forcing this. You can't force your teachings on people. You can't force your helping on people. You can't go find your customers. Your customers will find you when you realize you're a business owner. When you've created a product that helps people, the people that need your product will simply find you. It's that easy. That's because the universe is balanced. Okay? So, if you sense that you're going to be a helper or a teacher, like what I'm doing, helping miserable people, these helpless people, now I'm using labels here, but this is kind of how it works, they will come to you. And you will sense this beautiful harmony in it. So, hope that helps. My name is Ryan Hebert. I hope you enjoyed these insights. Please check out my blog. It's called mymorningmotivator.com.